Hello and welcome to Mostly Minnesota Music Podcast Edition. I'm Ann Tracy. I'm here with my co-host,
Heather Baker.
We are excited today to have Morris and McCumber. We've got James Morris. We've got Court McCumber, just so folks know who is it.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm excited. You guys have played. I just want to learn a little bit more about you because you guys have been playing together for 15, 16 years.
Well, we met each other that long ago.
Okay.
We've been playing shows together since about 2010, 2011. We've been going pretty much full time for the last 10 years.
Awesome.
I think if we've been playing 15 or 16 years, that's the time where you take a break and then you come back and do reunion tours. We're not quite at that level yet.
Not
We got to
quite
put
there.
five more years in.
Well, and what drew you to start playing together?
I guess I'll take that. Well, we were each playing separately, traveling the country, living out of our individual vans, and we met at a folk festival out in Colorado. And just sitting around a campfire, we were swapping songs and, struck up a conversation, enjoyed each other's music, sang together, and that really sparked something, I think. And we just kind of began a friendship that turned into some co-writing. We played some shows together, and we realized pretty quickly that the crowd preferred us singing together than us singing separately. And so, being two people who take the universe seriously, we decided to just throw it in the hat together, and we started making records together. And we just released our 8th studio album this year, so it's been going swell.
A big part of it is we realized that, this is Court talking, that I used to say that we had opposite strengths, but my wife always corrects me and says that we have complementary strengths. And that was one of the big things that, James is the main lyricist. It must be that Minnesota water or whatever's happening in Minnesota. You guys have maybe better educational systems than where I grew up in the South. But I was steeped in the music part of it. So we both brought something separate but we both needed that out of the other one, and it's been a wonderful ride to also be on the road with somebody else that's just as crazy as you are to consider this a way to make a living.
Hey now, I reflect that comment. Yeah, it's true. It's all that's true.
That's good. And I want to get into the album, but you guys have kind of been on a path. The one, because of my background that I noticed, you've got some Ashling, you've got some very Irish sounding music, you've got some very folk sounding music, and this latest Survival seems like there's one very Irish sounding song, at least one very Irish sounding song, I think, on the album. The Mess We're In, it seems like a very Irish sounding song. But otherwise, it's even a little, it's got that Americana, but it's quite popular too. I don't know if I want to say pop, but
it's okay to say that with people
okay, that's
Let's
good.
jump into it.
It's okay to say pop.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with trying to be popular, even if we've been playing acoustic instruments for all these years. I think what ended up happening with this record was James's upbringing in the Twin Cities, where he was influenced by a lot of pop music that was happening there, which was some of the best that was made in the world. And he was kind of always pushing me a little bit more in that direction for years, but also had one foot squarely in the Jayhawks Americana realm. I definitely think that I was way more rooted in acoustic stuff, but now after working with a few different producers, that to make pop music, it moves you in a way that some folk music does lyrically. I think pop music does full body wise, and it's fun when we were in the studio making this record. If we ever leaked video of us singing our vocal tracks, we'd both be dancing away the whole time, and it would be pretty funny because this music, once you add drums and drum loops and electric guitars, that's why that fills stadiums and folk musics and coffee shops. You can't dance around as much in a cafe.
Well said. I actually just talked to a venue yesterday, and they said they're going to make a dance area, which I thought was hilarious because we've never had people dancing. They're like, people are going to dance when you come play. I was like, great, let's make room.
I was gonna say when I listened to it, I did have Jayhawks or a male version of Indigo Girls, just with your harmonies and stuff, and just it has such a releasing effect too. Like it just, I don't know. I just wanted to sink down and really listen and calming. I don't know. I don't know what exactly it was, but I was like, ooh, I need more listening, more of this.
That's nice. I like
Yeah.
that imagery. Release.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So
it really
dancing and
was.
releasing.
Yeah, it really
Oh,
was sort of that way for us with this record more than any other record. We took the songs that were written and we sort of deconstructed them and rebuilt them because we wanted to play different instruments. I wanted to play electric guitar, Court wanted to play um, keys, and so we kind of rewrote the songs in that vein. And then our producer, Patrick Conway, well versed at playing bass and um, some looping and some different backgroundy kind of stuff. And he's very steeped in the Beatles and the Stones and the Beach Boys and great production techniques. And so he brought a lot of that to the table too, which really opened our eyes and got us very excited. Like Court said, it was hard to keep our feet still in the studio. It was very inspirational.
It is the sound of it is great. I like the theme of it. I think kind of in a way that pop music has, it feels like it's observational and you're kind of taking stock in what's happening, but taking stock in what's happening in society in some songs and other songs it's kind of what's happening. I don't necessarily want to say with you two, but with a relationship or a person. And I love that tone of it, especially kind of for the day that's in it, what we've been through after the last couple of years.
I agree completely. It's definitely both of those things. It's a mixture of them both, and aren't those two things really the same at the end of the day? Our relationships with each other is our society, and yeah, we've been through some ups and downs and some pulling apart and pushing together and isolation and all that stuff. And I think when we came to the song "Survival," we realized that should be the title of the work that we were doing because that's what we were all doing too. So it made a lot of sense.
I would say that these people have wondered if these songs were written because of the pandemic, and the answer is no and yes. Just like James said, isn't topical stuff and personal relationships at the end of the day the same thing? A lot of these lyrics were written before, but when we started arranging them and deconstructing them, we couldn't believe. And I'm not that surprised because James does write a lot of stuff that it ends up being, we think it's just for one fleeting moment that ends up being more powerful 15 years later or 10 years later. And I think that's just because we're trying to be as present as we can be when we're creating music, also performing music. And I think that's why a lot of those things end up, it all kind of spills over. I don't know if we would have called it survival if it wasn't during a pandemic. That might have been the only thing that could have changed during this time. But the pandemic did give us a chance to completely try to reinvent ourselves and not worry about that label like we talked about earlier of like Americana or Irish or folk. We've always kind of wanted to mix all that stuff together because those are the styles that really move us.
You two live in different places. Have
We
you
do.
how do you work together and how did you work together in the last couple of years? Was it entirely new for you to be
It was a little bit new. We had gotten to the point where we were touring 2 weeks every month, so it was quite regular. And we also do some adventure trips where we take fans to Ireland and to Cuba and rafting and different things. So we've always had a lot of opportunity to be together during the course of the year, and most of our, if you want to call it rehearsal, is happening live in front of an audience. And once you've done, I don't know, a couple hundred shows together, you kind of have a taste for what each other is capable of or is going to do. And then when you introduce new material, it doesn't take very long for it to grow into the set. But during the pandemic, yeah, it was quite different because, of course, we didn't have the shows anymore, and so luckily we had a Patreon page started, and we got involved in doing online concerts every week for our fans, and that kept us at least connecting once a week. And then once we started working on the record, we did start to visit each other again in our respective homes. So yeah, it was a challenge.
Well, I just think of, I mean, imagine that you have played hundreds of shows together.
Probably thousands at this point, or a
Probably
thousand,
thousands,
I would
yeah.
say. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
that,
we've played together quite a bit.
The one thing that we realized during the pandemic was the first couple months, I mean, the whole time it's been a challenge, but the first couple months was really James and I getting on the phone talking about, okay, so where should we book our next show? Who should we talk to? And it was the most frustrating thing because we had no clue when we were going to be able to do that again. So the first couple months was just this massive limbo of trying to navigate that. But then once we realized we had no control over that is when we switched gears and said, well, the one thing we know we can do is work on all this material that we have. So let's just focus on that. And maybe we won't lose our minds if we have at least that to focus on. And we definitely lost our minds many times, but we at least were able to do that for the majority of the time.
I was gonna say, I feel like that was in one of your songs, "Losing Your Mind." There.
Oh, if I wrote the lyrics, they're definitely in there someplace.
Yeah,
A mind or two has been lost.
you are not alone at all in that. Just because everybody was like, we have to be productive, we have to learn a language and do all this stuff, but you're kind of, like you said, stuck in this, what are we going to do, and kind of spinning, you know. What was it a productive artistic time too, after you kind of settled and went like, okay, here's just, you calmed your mind, like you said, or?
I think so. Go ahead, Court.
I was just going to say the one thing I heard for the majority of the pandemic, early on in the pandemic, people saying, oh, if you've ever wanted to take up yoga or learn an instrument or write your novel, like this is the time. And James and I listened to this podcast by an Irish guy named Blind Boy. He talks a lot about mental health. And the one thing this wasn't a sabbatical for everybody. This wasn't you get 2 years off. This is a pandemic. So James and I kind of realized, and because of listening to this guy, and we both connected with some of the things he had to say about trying to survive, was the number one thing during this pandemic is like, can we cope? Like if we wake up in the morning, what's the number one thing? Cope. You've won the day if you can do that. Like if you didn't take up yoga or stretch more or learn an instrument, you shouldn't be beating yourself up about it. Or, you know, why didn't I write more songs during 18 months? No way. Like I wanted to embrace that. We just have to, you know, if we can all get through this together, I want to see my friends at the other end of it. I want to see you guys on a Zoom call. I want to see you guys in person, which means that we did cope. We did make it through this. Get to the yoga stuff later. If you did take up yoga or playing guitar or writing poetry or running, whatever it was, good for you. But if you didn't, don't beat yourself up over it. So like we were able to take songs that James had already written lyrics to in melodies, and the pandemic gave us an opportunity to arrange those and finalize it. I don't know if I would have wanted to be like, hey, we have 18 months off. Why don't you go write songs? Like it wouldn't have been easy because James was home taking care of his daughters. My wife and I were home trying to navigate how do we survive this on so many different levels. I haven't been home, and we've been to, you know, I've been married for 16 years, and it's usually basically it's been 8 years. I'm gone half the year. Most people said, hey, Court, how are you doing? We don't actually care how Court's doing. How's Amy doing? Because I'm home all the time now. You know, like that's a massive challenge for everybody too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just curious because of all your songs and the lyrics and the calming and stuff. I felt like you have some intention of how to take care of yourself through, you know, mindfulness, music, whatever. So I appreciate your real comment on that, I guess.
Thanks, you guys. I think the music is what heals us. So writing those songs, being able to be a part of crafting them with James is kind of our healing space, even when there isn't a pandemic. So for us, it just kind of carried over. Felt like.
Yeah, it was really neat when we got together to arrange these songs and then start playing them together. There were many moments that were quite overwhelmingly emotional, and like you said, it was a release, just a major release, all that tension that had, out of the uncertainty of what was going to happen. So it was nice to get together and make that music.
Imagine. Can I shift gears just a little bit? Because I want to ask about Sugar in the Blood, that song. I like that. I can either guess what I think it's about, which is really based on where I am this week, or ask you what was your inspiration for the song.
I'll take the first part of it, but I actually would love to know what you feel with that song before I go into the nitty gritty of it.
Well, the funny thing about I can't listen to it without. I spend a lot of time on Stop Line 3 issues. I was at a rally at the front of the governor's yesterday, so I hear it, and I hear a lot of the land come through it, and kind of the respect for the land. And so, but that's me bringing my day to day into a song. So I thought I'm going to ask these guys what it really is about, because that's what it makes me think of, is kind of respect for the land.
Nice.
I started writing that song because I had read a book called Sugar in the Blood, and it was about the Irish slave trade to Barbados, back in the mid 1600s. And I was doing one of my things that it was writing another historical song from the Irish perspective of how the English had always kind of have been beating up on them for 800 years. And I had this song, and it was very similar groove. The chorus was the same, and James and I have a standing joke of when we play each other a song, if one of us thinks that it's good but not for the duo, we'll joke around and say to the other one, "Hey man, I love that song. I think it's great for your solo show." And so,
which neither one of us have, but
and so
the song Graveyard.
Yeah, so it's been sitting around for many years. 5-6 years I'd had the bones of that song, and James rewrote all the verse lyrics, obviously after George Floyd situation, and that shows up in the song. And I like your take on it, but I think that is what's going on in that song for us as well, of respect for land, respect for one another, no matter where you come from, race, religion. And I think James nailed the new lyrics with what is going on, topically in the country and all over the world. So it was an interesting thing. It was late at night in the studio. We ended up singing it a cappella for a while, and then our producer really got excited when we played it for him the next day. And then we built it into, the most hip hop kind of backbeat and drum loop we've ever done. And mixing it with banjo and cello kind of kept the organic and earthy, back to the land vibe with the final product. But that's probably one of the most impactful songs for when we get to sing that together. It's good to let belt that one out for sure.
Yeah, I think that both of you, I like both ideas about it. And for my part, it really was marrying those two things, because the chorus was very catchy to me, and the symbolism of that. But then I really did feel like we should bring it into the modern day, because all those things that are in that book, unfortunately, are still happening, just in very different economies and different nations in different ways. So it was cool to get to bring that into today's world.
That makes for an easy segue to ask more about the mess we're in. Because as I said, that's within the first 2 seconds. I was like, "Oh, that's an Irish song." I mean,
Well,
you
that
know,
was
and
that was originally written in Ireland, and it contains definitely some Irish landscape and thoughts that occurred there. It's also a relationship song, and it's also not. And I think it's interesting that you picked up on that because we had our friends the Fiddle Case, which is an Irish band in Clare, County
Claire, yeah.
Clare, played on that particular song. So I like that that's getting through. And it is a mess we're in.
Well,
For sure.
well, some of the phrases are just so, the fine soft day. I mean, that is a classic
Yeah.
Irish phrase. That explanation of it. So it's fun to hear. But then the idea of, you're set to anchor and I'm set to swim, and finding that balance between
Yeah.
a relationship and
Yeah. It's tough to find that mate, that soulmate, where you're on the same path together, isn't it? Or maybe you all are all set. I don't know.
Amazon's gonna deliver it someday, I'm thinking. I don't know.
I don't know. I've had a lot of Amazon
Maybe I have
boxes
to be
show
a
up and I
Prime
haven't seen
member.
it yet.
Okay.
There one in
No,
here?
that song, The Mess We're In, that's the song where the lyrics evoke such a vivid space in this world. If you've ever been to Ireland or if you haven't, we've all seen the movies that take place there, and Connemara ponies on a craggy old shore. Whether you live in Connemara in County Galway or County Mayo, like you could be traveling up to the shore of Lake Superior, and it conjures up these images, and a stone cottage, weathered sturdy door, and it's there's some very vivid things in that song that I love when we get to sing that together, because it brings me right to that place, and also to the current state of affairs. So it's neat to balance the ancient and the new.
Absolutely. The
well,
ancient and the new.
it takes me right to 40 foot in Dunleary, which is kind of city girl version of the
City
it's
girl
like
version.
it's a city girl version of Ireland. Yes, with
Yeah.
that, I've spent a day or two in Connemara. I've spent years, in Dunleary. So yeah, but it really is quite stark because, well, it's all too cold for me to swim in, but it's the harsh rocks and the cold water, and it's it's a terrible beauty. Is what I mean. It's a cold,
Yeah,
unforgiving.
they say the harsh beauty
Yeah.
in Ireland for sure. And isn't that true about all of this stuff that we're going through? I mean, it's a harsh beauty. There's things we can take out of this pandemic that the silver linings are pretty impressive if we're fortunate enough to make it through it with our sanity. But there has been silver linings to all of it. And people talk about, will it get back to normal? I mean, what does that even mean? What was normal? What does new normal mean? But we can all decide to change a few things if we would like to.
But well, it kind of gets to your point before of, really our goal through the heart of the pandemic is just let us all wake up tomorrow healthy, in mind and in body,
Yes.
and that makes me think a little bit about I've held on as long as I can.
Yeah.
That song James had recorded a version of that on the solo record. It was called Tossing and Turning, and we had worked on that years and years ago, and I always loved the song, and it never had a chorus. It had wonderful verses and a great hook, and I'd always loved that song. I had been playing it at my solo shows, and we just decided to work on it for some reason, because I just loved the chord progression and what we had done years ago. And then all of a sudden, we wrote that chorus together in Houston. We were at our manager and friend Tim's house, and all of a sudden, yet again, we were both like, "Wow, chicken skin, goosebumps." There's something here, and I don't think that would have been a song we probably would have worked on if it wasn't pandemic. But it just kind of was, yet again, everything was written before the pandemic, but it was something that we probably wouldn't have worked on if it was a normal way that we tour half the year. If we have a week off, we book studio time, make the record, do a Kickstarter, and sell it at shows. Like, no thought of we should maybe do a little bit more publicity or figure this out. But because of pandemic, I think we had like, hey, what do you think about this song? Let's rework this. It's never made it to a Moores and McCumber record, and it's a Moores and McCumber song. So, and it's obviously I've held on as long as I can. I mean, that's the thing. It was these songs are good for any time, but I think it definitely was more at the forefront during this year.
I love how the lyrics, like you had touched on before, are, written long ago, but so poignant right now too. And even in your song, Survival, there's some, I only wrote this part down, comes from your TV set, comes from the friends you never met. And I'm just thinking all the garbage that we see on the TV and some of the people that were the garbage makers too. And then just think of kids and people not knowing each other, but are so affected by what a stranger says or some friend that didn't like it or whatever. And it just was so, I don't know, vivid to me, I guess.
Nice.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about that song from your angle too.
Well, again, it's another thing where you're just seeing stuff happening out in the world, and I don't know if it's like this for all artists. For me, when I'm present, words come and thoughts congeal, and when Court and I are together working on music, the right song comes along or the right arrangement appears if we're both present and working at it, working towards that common goal. And so it's really, I feel like it's outside of ourselves, but like in that particular line, just thinking about how much we allow ourselves to be led by media or by, social media, for example, with the friends that you never met. Think of all the people that you're connected to on Facebook or Instagram, and you think, oh my God, if I only had a life like that. Well, your life might be so much better than theirs. They're just taking pictures of the good meals they had. And, it's just, you just never know. And then I think there's a part in that song where we're talking about the environment and how it's just, it's right in front of us, and we have to open our eyes and see what's going on and take on those lessons in our own lives. We all have to, it's very easy to say things online and to claim things online, and it's much more difficult to walk that walk and live that life. And so it's a little bit of that, and it's a little bit about the sadness of that not being the reality all the time. And
that one definitely was pretty current for what was happening, because we were working on that last September when we got together out in Colorado, we might have been in Carlton, Minnesota, right, James? And
we were, yeah.
You had a bunch of that stuff, and it was very different sounding and song. And then we were sitting there playing. You were playing electric guitar, I was on piano, and all of a sudden we stripped it so far down to where the chorus is just us singing Survival and doing the oh, and we both would just yet again.
Reach
the entire time,
yeah,
reach for the Kleenex, chicken skin. Okay, we got something here. And then James does his normal thing. He takes his notebook and he leaves the room for a second and comes back with some of those verses that were just so perfect for what we're going through right now, because that's what we've been hit with for many, many years. But it seems like especially the last 5 years of the comes at you. I just love that line, comes at you from the TV set. It's like it's just throwing it right in your face. It's not a passive thing anymore of, a way to relax at the end of a day and check out what happened for an hour of news. It's constantly.
I found myself so angry this week because I'm out doing my life. I've got a couple of daughters, teenage daughters, they're in school, and I'm getting notes every day that another person has COVID. And they suggest one way to protect yourself is to wear a mask, but they don't have them wearing masks at school. And there's more people getting it than ever, but we're still just out living our lives. But for a year and a half, none of us could go out and live our lives. And I'm thinking, am I mad about what we're doing now, or am I mad about what I didn't do then? I don't know. I'm just upset about it. It's crazy. And a lot of that we're led. I haven't checked the news much lately because I've just been so misled. I feel one way or the other, and I can really only do what's in front of me. I can't do what's in front of people in Chicago or New York or LA. I can do what's in front of me here in Superior, and then when I leave next week, when we go on the road, we'll meet the people in Minneapolis and see what's going on there. And we're very aware of our surroundings, and I'm not making any judgments about anyone one way or the other. It's just I feel like we've had this 2 years where we've all gotten lost.
That's nice of you. You're the part of the duo that doesn't make the judgments about one part of another. Leave that up to me.
Well, I might make them. I might not announce them as much as you.
That's why I think you were like, "Hey, Court, you sing "Sugar in the Blood." I'd like hearing that you said you were angry this week, because usually it's me that you're like, "Court, sing that song." You'll get it across more. You're angrier.
Yeah, I just don't know who
With stuff
what
like
to be
that,
angry at. But yeah.
I know. I mean, but it's like when we sing the line in Survival. When the leaves are turning brown, nothing but ashes fall into the ground. Like the way that I visualize those lines in that song Survival is the West burning down because I'm living in the middle of it, and it might be something slightly different for you, James, and other people, which is great, I think. Same thing with the social media kind of lines. It might not mean the same thing to other people depending on your involvement in that. Some people are really smart and stay away from it, and some of us think that it's a way to let people know about shows coming up or CD releases or new music. I try to look at it more of dog pictures and cat pictures, and when we're playing a gig, that's kind of how I look at social media. Now, I wish more people did that, because if you go down that rabbit hole of cat videos and your favorite musicians, like I did that last night. I was on social media watching Glenn Hansard and his shows he played in California, and I was just absolutely blissed out because I love his music, and if you do that, it's a wonderful medium to feel good and not be angry. But there's also the other part that I guess has to balance it. The yin and yang of it but it's, you can get down the wrong rabbit hole, but we try to just post our fun Moores and McCumber behind the scenes goofy videos, us growing mustaches for Movember and Men's Health and stuff like that.
I appreciate that. I actually really love to hear when you're saying you sing or writing it and you get goosebumps from your own work. Like, I love that. Like, it feels like you're in the moment with us, or get the same feeling, or I don't know, just overcoming with, I don't even know how to say it, but just, I appreciate that it's not just a bunch of words that sound good together. Like, you feel exactly what you're saying. The passion is there, obviously.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself, but I'm no master of any of this, and I totally get goose flesh when we hit the right moment, and we know that's the spot. And we announced that to each other when we were in the studio making the record with our producer. And Patrick said, I think goose flesh is our guide. When we hit those moments, we know we're on to it, and then that's where we stop. It's like once we make that happen, then we're blown away. So that there must be something amazing going on there. So you don't try to fix that. You just go, oh, thank you, and now on to the next challenge. So it's totally carried me away for sure.
It also doesn't mean as the person creating the art, just because we get it doesn't mean that anybody else will, but nobody will feel that if we don't.
That's right.
That's how that works. Like if we don't love the song, there's no way we'd ever be able to perform it and sell it I'm saying sell, but not in the capitalist sense. There's no way we would be able to perform that song if we didn't love it and have anybody else feel it. It's not possible.
We wouldn't be able to get it across.
Because then we wouldn't be present doing it. And, performing music with James, not only business partner, best buddy, but we also have the camaraderie where it's like, if we're not loving doing it, there's no way that anybody else would feel that. And performing music for me, you know, unfortunately, but luckily pre-pandemic, and I think moving forward, I get to do it so much in this duo that it's the only time that I feel completely present, and I'm lucky that that's at least a good chunk of my life where I'm present. So I cherish those moments.
That's good. Talking about the video makes me want to ask about the video for Survival. In particular, the shift from the black and white to color at the end.
Interesting.
Which,
Do I know about that?
Our director there and good friend Tim Bloomquist, I think he had an idea of that made perfect sense. And when I look at it now, I mean, it wasn't until then, yet again, kind of going back to what we've talked about today, it's like you can have the stuff that is dark and has a cloud over you, and when is stuff going to get better? But at the same time, that song also does give you this uplifting thing because of some of those lyrics that we're singing. All we need is love, chance in survival is the key to it. So it's like, to me, I watched that video and it's very much mental health-ish, which is, once you see that color, it's like, oh, what an uplifting, I'm coming into the light. There's a walk out here in Denver I think it's called that. It's Walk into the Light. And it's that you start walking at midnight and you walk until sunrise, and it's to raise money for mental health. And I feel that way about the black and white going color. My take on, yet again, lyrics that James wrote and kind of the musical piece that we put in there with certain string sounds and cello, and it's all this uplifting thing. It's major chords, but it's talking about stuff that's a little bit dark at some point, but then the music kind of lifts you out of it.
Yeah, it's a nice juxtaposition, for sure.
I like that. It always brings Wizard of Oz to me.
Mm. Now we gotta play Dark Side of the Moon then during that video. Just mute Survival and play Pink Floyd during that video.
My brother was always good for that. I'll ask him to do it. He was always the one to do that with my kids. Well, it will be nice for you guys to get on the road, and I want to make sure we talk a little bit about your upcoming shows, because you've got Bryant Lake Bowl on November 3rd.
Yep.
And Mother Banjo
is opening. Yep.
Awesome. And then you're at the Rife Center in Grand Rapids, Minnesota.
4th. Yes.
I say that. I spend a lot of time there. I've even booked rooms in Grand Rapids, Michigan, while I've been sitting at the coffee shop in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. So I want to make sure.
Yes.
They know me there.
Minnesota.
They know me there. Yeah. And then November 5th, you're the Delano Performing Arts Center.
That's right. It's hosted by the Reader House Concert series. And yeah, we're going to be at the Delano Performing Arts Center.
Now, have you been able to perform in front of a lot of people over the summer, or?
We did a lot of outdoor shows this summer. So we have had some great shows, and now we're excited to see what it's going to be like getting back inside.
Nice.
I have a question. Where's the dance floor? Which one has the dance floor happening? Do you know?
It's a show we're doing in Colorado, out in Palisade, Colorado. Maybe all of these will have a dance floor from now on. We'll see.
I feel like, we got to put it out there. We might need to use it.
Let's do it.
If we need room in Bryant Lake Bowl, we got the bowling alley lanes, right? We just move the show out there.
There you go.
Out of the theater and onto the alley.
Just open that door.
I'm excited to get back to Minnesota and play these shows with the new record in hand. And it will be interesting playing back inside, but I feel confident with Colorado and Minnesota. Minnesota, you folks believe in science, so I am happy about that. So I feel safe doing these shows, and I think the crowd will be as well.
Yeah.
So nothing. I think we're all safe. It'll be a wonderful evening of music with me and Mr. Morris.
Good. I want to make sure that we also mention you had another album EP come out. Companion Volume 1.
Yes.
just want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about that too.
That definitely is the silver lining of the pandemic. Was I don't know if of Moores and McCumber putting out a 10 tune instrumental record would have ever happened, just because it's not something we normally do. When we travel around Ireland, our fans and friends will see James and I with mandolin and fiddle in hand playing a bunch of Irish fiddle tunes, just because we love doing it for the crack. I mean, we just love sitting around having a pint. If it's a nice sunny day, obviously everybody's outside, so we'll be playing these Irish fiddle tunes. But we also had a bunch of original instrumental music that we've been working on. But like I said, it's not something we do. You know, our duo is a harmony-driven duo. It's singing, it's songs, it's lyrics. But, you know, in the background, there was all these tunes and instrumentals kind of brewing. And I'm glad we actually had the time to finish that off. So it's another collection of music that's, you know, it's very soundtrack kind of esque music. It's something that we've heard people say, like, oh, I love listening to that when I'm doing work, because when you guys are singing, I can't concentrate on my emails sending out. But if it's no words, it works out great. And that's kind of my strength in the duo is the music part, is no words, except when I'm talking in these things. I talk too much, but James is much more eloquent when it comes to rhyming stuff and making people feel warm and fuzzy inside. I don't do that.
Oh my. Truer words have never been spoken.
Nice. There's room for all of it, because sometimes we got to work and that the instrumentals help us focus, and sometimes we want to get away from the work and listen to
Yes.
Yeah, and we have such a great community of fans that I think they want to experience everything we have to offer. So I think it's actually really good that we had the amount of time to bring some of that into the live show, and I think it really makes it even more impactful, because it gives you a chance to just digest some of what's been said or sung, and then just take in some more music, and it's nice. I think it's a great addition.
I can see it.
Our live show is the best it's ever been. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
That's fantastic. There you go. That's a promise made right there.
Yes.
That's it.
That's good. I will include in the notes, but tell folks where they can find you online.
Sure, it's mooresandmccumber.com. It's MOORSANDMCCUMBER.com. And you can find all of our music and shows and all that good information there. We do some adventure tours, like I mentioned, to Ireland and Cuba, and rafting in Idaho, and we're talking about doing a vineyard trip to Sonoma. So we've got some great adventures that people can come on and hang with us and hear some wonderful music from all around the world.
That is some full service entertainment. That's amazing.
I've also heard, I can't do this because I live in the mountains, but I've heard that you can ask Alexa to play Moores and McCumber Survival and
She'll
Companion Volume 1, and Alexa will play that. So you can hear it on all your streaming services.
Nice.
Yes. I had to drive a couple miles to get up the mountain to get real
I
internet.
can imagine. I can imagine. Well, it's beautiful though. It's got to be beautiful there.
Yeah.
Very inspiring.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. James Cord, thank you so much for joining us, and we've enjoyed both of the albums. So
Pleasure meeting you both. Have a wonderful evening.
thanks.
Thank you so much.
You too.
Take care.